So at this point in the book, this is where things start getting really strange because it's no longer just about volunteers or emotional healing. Now we're talking about ETs, light beings, spaceships, interdimensional consciousness, and beings that supposedly helped influence humanity from behind the scenes. But I found that the deeper I got into this material, the less this book felt like it was about aliens. If you've been following this series so far on The Three Waves of Volunteers and The New Earth by Dolores Cannon, then you already know that Dolores Cannon was a hypnotherapist who spent decades working with people in a very deep trance state through her QHHT method. And across hundreds of sessions, patterns kept repeating. Not just stories about past lives or spiritual experiences, but recurring descriptions of beings, lights, ships, frequencies, telepathic communication, and consciousness that exists beyond the physical body. What really surprised me was that almost nobody in these hypnosis sessions described feeling fearful. Quite the opposite, actually. People often described feeling calm, familiar, safe, peaceful, or like they were returning somewhere that they somehow recognized. Like whatever these beings were, they didn't feel foreign, they felt familiar. That's a really interesting pattern because culturally we've been taught to associate aliens with invasion, fear, destruction, danger, and hostility. But that's not how Dolores's material presents them at all. And before we go any further, I do want to say something important. I'm completely comfortable admitting that I don't have all the answers here. I don't know exactly what exists beyond human perception. I don't know whether extraterrestrials exist in the way that people imagine them, but I do think that it's incredibly arrogant for humanity to assume that we are the highest form of consciousness in the universe or that we are completely alone in existence. We discover new things constantly, every day. There are things humans once thought were impossible that later became scientific fact. And even now, there's still so much about consciousness, reality, energy, the universe, and even the human brain that we barely understand. So I'm comfortable sitting in the unknown just a little bit. I don't need certainty to explore ideas thoughtfully. And honestly, human fascination with sky beings has existed forever. It shows up in ancient mythology, religious texts, spiritual experiences, paintings, movies, pop culture, and even modern UFO discussions. Humanity has always looked up and wondered, are we alone? Well, according to Dolores's hypnosis sessions, Earth itself was originally part of a much larger experiment. Different ET groups or higher beings were supposedly involved in helping begin life on this planet. The idea was to create an ideal human experience here, but then something happened. A meteorite introduced bacteria and contamination into the developing ecosystem. And according to these sessions, there was concern that humanity would no longer develop perfectly. Some wanted to stop the experiment entirely, others wanted it to continue, and ultimately, they chose to continue. That feels kind of symbolic in itself. Things didn't go perfectly, but life continued anyway. Then the book says that something major changed around World War II. Humanity developed nuclear weapons. Dolores repeatedly describes these beings observing Earth and realizing humanity had developed technology much faster than consciousness. And honestly, that feels incredibly relevant right now. We have artificial intelligence, advanced technology, mass communication, scientific breakthroughs, weapons capable of massive destruction, yet emotionally, humanity still struggles deeply with fear, greed, corruption, violence, division, control, and power. The book suggests these beings understood they could not directly interfere because of free will, but they also feared humanity could destroy itself, not just the Earth, but potentially affect life beyond Earth itself. And I'll admit, there's actually something strangely comforting about the idea that maybe humanity isn't completely unsupervised. Like if these crazy people in power ever pushed things too far, something larger could step in and say, absolutely not. Because destruction on that level wouldn't just affect one country or even one planet, it would affect life itself. Now, am I saying I know that's true? No, not at all. But I understand why people find comfort in that idea, especially during chaotic times. And according to the book, this is where the volunteers came in. These beings supposedly could not interfere directly, so instead, some chose to incarnate as humans themselves, not to dominate humanity, not to rule humanity, but to subtly influence things from within through compassion, healing, emotional awareness, calmness, creativity, teaching, and helping people awaken consciously. And this is where the ET material starts becoming less about space aliens and more about consciousness itself. One of the most recurring themes in the hypnosis sessions is the idea that many of these beings aren't even fully physical in the way that humans think of physicality. Some are described more as light, frequencies, plasma-like beings, consciousness fields, or energetic intelligences. There are entire chapters where people describe energy worlds, energy communication, multidimensional spaces, beings without mouths or eyes, telepathy instead of speech, or existing as pure vibration. Honestly, some of these stories are really out there. There were some moments reading the book where I thought, okay, now we are really getting deep into the cosmic weeds here. But underneath all the strange imagery, the same themes kept repeating: consciousness, healing, unity, emotional evolution, interconnectedness, and raising awareness. That repetition is what I personally found interesting. The hypnosis session from chapter 13 that really stayed with me, though, was someone regressing into a past life as a tree. And it didn't feel primitive or unconscious at all, actually. It felt ancient, peaceful, deeply aware, deeply connected. The person described existing almost as pure observation and connection rather than the frantic emotional chaos that humans tend to experience. There was a sense of being fully connected to the earth itself, to nature, and to life all around it. I found that really fascinating because it expands the conversation far beyond just ETs and UFOs. It raises this deeper question of, what if consciousness exists in forms that humans don't fully understand yet? What if nature itself carries consciousness in some way? Later in that same past life regression, the person moved into another lifetime. They lived connected to Lemuria. Hopefully I'm saying that right. That's an ancient civilization that happened before Atlantis. And according to the hypnosis material, this person was a healer who worked with crystals and stones energetically. The people there supposedly understood frequencies and consciousness in a very different way than we do now. They could infuse crystals and rocks with certain energies, information, and healing frequencies. And the book even suggests that some of these stones are still buried in lava beneath modern-day Hawaii. Now, obviously, I can't verify any of this literally, but I actually think this part of the book is just so beautiful because it's really asking us to reconsider our relationship with nature itself. What if the earth is more alive than we think? What if trees, plants, water, stones, and ecosystems carry forms of memory or intelligence that modern humans have mostly disconnected from? And let me just face it, the older I get, the more I feel like modern humans underestimate nature completely. I think we've become so disconnected from the earth that we forget that we are nature, not separate from it. And actually, this influenced the next book that I've decided to read and discuss on this channel. It's called The Man Who Planted Trees. Partly because while reading The Three Waves of Volunteers, I became really interested in this idea that nature itself may carry consciousness and intelligence, that trees may matter far more than we currently understand, and that preserving ancient trees and their genetic material could actually be extremely important for the future of the earth. And just a quick teaser, that book also discusses someone having a near-death experience involving light beings who warned him about environmental destruction and the importance of restoring trees to the planet. And it's pretty cool how the current book I'm reading actually has some of the themes from the Three Waves of Volunteers. But I also want to tell you about this other thing that stood out to me from the Three Waves of Volunteers. It's how often these otherworldly beings describe humanity almost like a species in emotional adolescence. Not evil, not hopeless, just immature with power. And honestly, that tracks. Because humans are capable of incredible beauty and love, but we're also capable of destruction, manipulation, emotional chaos, cruelty, and fear-based behavior. The book repeatedly frames Earth as a place of really just dense emotional energy, and many of the volunteers supposedly struggled being here because human emotions felt just so overwhelmingly heavy to them. That, I think, is one of the reasons that the ET and light being material resonates so emotionally with people. Because underneath this cosmic language, it's really just talking about emotional overwhelm, nervous system exhaustion, loneliness, fear, purpose, healing, and trying to remain loving and peaceful in some really difficult times. These are very human things. One thing I personally kept thinking while reading this book was maybe the ETs in this book function less like aliens from outer space and more like symbols for higher consciousness itself. Or maybe they're both. I really don't know. But I think it's interesting that almost every message in the book comes back to love, compassion, emotional healing, unity, and consciousness evolving, not domination, not fear, not control, actually completely the opposite. And there's another reason that I think this material resonates right now specifically. It's just that a lot of people in this world are feeling like the planet is unstable, systems are breaking down, society itself feels emotionally exhausted, and something big is shifting culturally. Whether that shift is spiritual, psychological, social, or something else entirely, people feel it. And this book gives people a framework for understanding that feeling. One of the biggest recurring themes in the later parts of the book is the idea that fear keeps humanity trapped in lower states of consciousness. And honestly, even without the ET material, I think there's some truth in that. Fear absolutely affects decision making, governments, media, relationships, nervous systems, and society itself. Meanwhile, calmness, compassion, groundedness, healing, and emotional awareness can spread too. That's one of the biggest takeaways that I've had from this entire book series so far. So what do I personally believe? I believe humanity still understands very little about consciousness. I believe there's more to reality than we currently understand scientifically. I believe humans are deeply interconnected emotionally and energetically, and I believe fear keeps people disconnected not only from themselves, but each other. As for ET specifically, I'm comfortable admitting that I don't fully know, but I also don't think we should automatically dismiss every unknown thing simply because it challenges our current understanding. And I definitely don't think that fear is the right response. At the end of the day, I don't think this part of the book is really about proving aliens exist. I think it's asking much deeper questions like, what is consciousness? Are humans truly separate from each other? Why does humanity struggle so much emotionally? Can consciousness evolve? Is there more to reality than beyond the physical world? And what would humanity look like if we operated more from love instead of fear? And honestly, these are probably questions worth exploring regardless. In the next video, we're going deeper into one of the biggest concepts of the book, the New Earth. this dimensional shift, the splitting of timelines, the raising of frequency, and what Dolores Cannon believed humanity was actually moving toward. And trust me, this is where the series gets really wild. So if you're following along with this deep dive series, definitely subscribe, turn your notifications set to all, and I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. Do you think that we're alone in the universe? Do you think the ET material in Dolores' book is meant to be understood literally, symbolically, or is it more somewhere in between? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you at the next video.